The iPhone 14 Pro takes everything people loved about the iPhone 13 Pro and copies almost all of it, but it also adds a couple of different changes. Do those features make it worth upgrading from a 3-year-old phone, a 2-year-old phone, or maybe even a 1-year-old smartphone? Well, let's find out with a little review. Apple basically releases a new iPhone every single year, so I'm gonna focus on what's new for this model rather than detail every little thing about the phone. Okay, so out of the box, the iPhone 14 Pro and any iPhone 14 model comes with just the iPhone itself, a USB-C charging cable, and a note that this is an eSIM only model. The iPhone 14 Pro no longer has a notch, and now has this pill-shaped housing that contains the front camera and Face ID that Apple dubs the dynamic island. The island shrinks and expands depending on the activities that are happening on your phone. If you connect AirPods, receive a text, get a call, whatever. It gets big, then small, then big, then small, depending on what's happening on your phone. Honestly, that looks a lot better than what they would do in the past. Apple would try to hide the notch behind wallpapers with black backgrounds in all of their marketing materials, and now they're just embracing the dynamic island, while the body itself looks very similar to the 13 Pro. Okay, technically the screen and body is slightly bigger, but beyond that, this is just the same design Apple has been using for the last couple of years. So now let's talk about the user experience. For the most part, it's very similar to any other iPhone within recent memory. But with the addition of this dynamic island, the iPhone 14 Pro and Pro Max changed the way alerts and information are handled on the iPhone. The pill expands and retracts depending on what you're doing. If you're listening to music on Spotify, the album art and waveform sit up there. During a phone call, the waveform and time spent on the call is up there. If you start a timer, the countdown lives up there. Basically, anything that you're doing in the background of your phone that's not active on the display at that time is pushed to the dynamic island, which lets you have on-hand information that you can look at pretty much any time, but not necessarily take up the entire screen. You can have two different background tasks in the dynamic island at once, with one being full-sized and the other shrunken down to basically an icon. When something is active on the dynamic island and you click on it, the app related to it opens up. And when you press and hold on the item, it opens a small window for you to adjust anything if needed. The functionality built into the dynamic island is fantastic. They took the ugliest part of the iPhone and turned it into a design element. Would we all prefer that the cameras and sensors be covered up by a display anyway? Yeah, but if they're going for the hole punch look, this is the way to do it. All the little animations and details you get when you're using the dynamic island shows that they really put a lot of work into it, and it works great. But the dynamic island also creates an issue that we haven't had on the iPhone before. If you're watching a standard YouTube video, it's usually in widescreen or an aspect ratio of 16:9, like the fantastic video you're watching right now. But some content is in even wider aspect ratios, like movies or even some other YouTube channels. And so you'll start getting black bars on the side because the phone is trying to hide the pill-shaped cutout, or you get a nice chunk cut out of your display, even more than the old notch. Because while overall the pill takes up less space, the dynamic island is placed further down than the notch was previously. So your average YouTube or TikTok video, no issues. But watching movies, MKBHD, and LTT videos on your phone did kind of get a little worse. Alright, before we continue talking about all the other features of the iPhone 14 Pro, I want to talk about this video's sponsor, Casetify. Casetify makes customizable phone cases that look good without compromising durability. For example, I chose this koi fish case because I like how they circle the MagSafe connection. They collab with a ton of artists to bring endless choices for case designs. You can even upload your own custom design to give the phone your own touch, and add awesome features like MagSafe to the case. Casetify also built an important protection feature into their cases, like EcoShock protected cases, which provide better tension distribution and abrasion resistance across the case and into the edges. Okay, great. The case sounds durable and all, but will it really protect my phone? I have my own personal iPhone 14 Pro right here, using this Casetify Ultra Impact case that is up to 11.5 foot drop proof and up to 5 times the military standard, meaning it's been drop tested 130 times and the EcoShock protection doesn't wear off. I'm gonna drop it off this 8-foot ladder onto solid concrete. We're gonna find out how it does on there, because I know if I fell off an 8-foot ladder, it would not be good and I'd probably get seriously hurt. But will this phone get hurt? Let's find out. And honestly, Let me focus there. As you can see here from this testing, I did not fall, but the phone did. But the phone is also safe and snug in the Casetify case, and there's no damage to be seen. So if you're interested in buying your next iPhone or any phone case, check out Casetify and use the link below or in the description to save 15% off your next phone case. Anyway, back to the video. Then there's the always-on display. This is a feature Android devices have had forever. The earliest I can remember at the top of my head is the LG G5. That phone had this feature. On the iPhone 14 Pro and 14 Pro Max, when you lock the phone with the side button, the screen dims and the phone screen refreshes at 1 Hz, meaning it slows down dramatically. But in this case, it doesn't matter because you're not using it. By doing this, it conserves your battery because it's not using the screen at its maximum performance, and you have a display that's constantly on. It's really neat, and thanks to iOS 16, you're able to add widgets to your lock screen and always on display. On my lock screen, I have widgets for my alarm, battery percentage for my connected devices like AirPods, and a nice little indicator for my front door lock status. The only minor gripe I have with the always on display is that if you try the widgets from the always on display, it just registers it as a tap on the screen and then wakes up the lock screen. You then have to press the widget from the lock screen, not from the dimmed always on display. While it is called the always on display, the screen doesn't always stay on though. If you walk away from the always on display with an Apple Watch, or if you put it in your pocket, the screen will fully turn off. When you put your phone into low power mode, it treats the lock button just like older iPhones. It just turns off the display. When you charge your phone at night, the screen turns off after some time. But I like that it's smart and it's adaptive depending on the situation. Overall, the always on display is a nice addition, but does add a drain to the battery life. But I can see people using this phone for a few years, and as their battery starts degrading, they decide to turn off this feature for longer battery life. Okay, the last major update to the iPhone 14 Pro is the new 48 megapixel camera. iPhones in general have been sitting at the 12 megapixel camera mark for the last few years. And with this upgrade, you get some pretty cool benefits. Images are overall sharper than their previous model, especially when you zoom into the images. Things like small text that looked blurry are now way sharper. And the iPhone 14 Pro also does much better in low light environments and less noise. The whites in photos look much less harsh now. Before, it would look closer to a deep fried meat, and now the bright whites look a bit more muted. It's not as eye-catching, but it's also not as eye-searingly bright as before. The video side of the camera has also gotten a lot better. The action mode provides amazing video stabilization that lets you get good, smooth, shake-free footage straight from your iPhone without a big, bulky, hard-to-carry item like a gimbal. But just keep in mind that this does mean you sacrifice a bit of image quality, but it's also a really nice option to have. The stabilization in action mode is really, really good. Overall, with the new camera functionality, I think this is the biggest selling point of this year's iPhone. Improved camera performance across both photos and videos. They did an excellent job here. So I guess this all leads us to conclusion time. Is the iPhone 14 Pro worth upgrading to? Well, I know most people who own an iPhone only upgrade to a new iPhone. So let's make it easy and talk about it that way. How people determine when it's time to upgrade depends on a bunch of different factors, but the ones that I think are the biggest are these. Do their phones still do things smoothly like social media browsing and gaming? Does their phone hold a charge? And does it take good pictures? And that really depends on person to person, but I would like to think that for most people, any phone from the iPhone 11 and later, you can get by without upgrading. They all play games at least decently, and web browse just fine. Battery replacements that would make all these phones feel like new only cost $70 at the Apple Store, and any high-end smartphone from the last 5 years takes pretty good photos and videos. So if those are your main concerns, you shouldn't need to worry about upgrading your old iPhone. But then who should be looking at the iPhone 14 Pro? It's for someone whose old phone can no longer do what they need it to do. Smartphones, as they are, at least in my opinion, have slowed down dramatically in improvements. The number of features they add each year are minimal, and that's no more obvious than when you look at the iPhone. This year, the primary upgrade was the dynamic island, always on display, the improved camera, and slightly faster A16 chip. Don't get me wrong, the iPhone 14 Pro is a fantastic phone with great performance, features, and camera, but it isn't a night and day difference compared to last year. And that was also the case from the iPhone 12 Pro to the 13 Pro. I honestly think we've reached a point where people should really only consider upgrading when their phone no longer meets their needs rather than upgrading every 2 years. Phones today are just so good, and next year's model will probably be just a little better. So is it worth trading in your old phone and pay a lot of money for just a little better? I don't want to end this video on a negative note, so I'll try to put a positive tone on this. The iPhone 14 Pro is Apple's best smartphone yet. It makes the already great iPhone camera better with the sharper and better low light performance of their 48 megapixel camera. Action mode brings their video stabilization to the next level, and the dynamic island makes the pill feel seamless with the UI. This is their best phone and refines an already great phone into an even better one. But should you upgrade to this one? If you're using an iPhone 11 Pro or older, I'd consider the iPhone 14 Pro if your old phone no longer meets your needs. If I was on the iPhone 12, 12 Pro, 13, 13 Pro, then I'd probably wait until next year. Anyway, what do you personally think? Are you planning to upgrade to the iPhone 14 Pro? How far back do you have to be before you're willing to upgrade? Or do you just wait until your phone is falling apart and non-functioning before you even consider upgrading? Let me know in the comment section below if you enjoyed this video. Give it a thumbs up, and well, don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you all next time. Bye.